Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
I think this is indicative of where filmmaking and entertainment is going. Then you can strap on your virtual reality head deck and experience it as if you were literally there. And I can fundamentally see, in 50 years, going to the cinema to see a movie will be considered quaint. Your grandchildren will be looking at you, Dan, going, so wait, you stood in line and you watched something in 2D on a wall?
I could say, I went uphill and it was snowing.
Exactly. Inside the theater, because there was no roof.
That's right. But we were thankful.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello and welcome to show number 96 of Coffee with Kenobi, your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking some hot coffee on a chilly Illinois evening out of a gold Lucasfilm exclusive Star Wars 40th anniversary mug. I just got back from a whirlwind trip to San Francisco and look forward to letting you know all about it as we sit back and have some Star Wars conversation. On Coffee with Kenobi, we hope to make you think about the mythology of Star Wars in a whole new way and maybe laugh a little bit in the process. On today's show, we will talk about what the story group means and its impact on A New Hope specifically. We check in with Nick DiCo for an update on the world of Star Wars video games. CWK newsman Tom Gross brings us the latest news and shares his experiences in San Francisco. And in the coffee chat, we resume our CWK book study on Phasma, chapters 5 to 11. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
I mentioned on show number 95 about the upcoming Star Wars Experience Dinner and a movie that will be at the Peoria Riverfront Museum that I will be hosting. And again, it is something where we're going to have a presentation with original Star Wars assistant art director Peter Wentworth Shields, who is someone who created the Millennium Falcon cockpit. He helped design it, the Death Star garbage compactor, and the kitchen interior on Tatooine, which is really, really cool. The 501st will be there for pictures and fun Star Wars interactions. And as I said, I'll be hosting the event and bringing the Coffee with Kenobi flair to the experience, and it's going to be great. And be sure to check out the link because I just checked it, and there are only 40 seats left for the entire thing. It is $67 for members and $75 for the public, but you are getting a really, really nice meal, a great evening, and then you were able to see The Last Jedi the day that it comes out, which is great. It's the whole thing is from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m., and I hope to see you there. But that's not the only thing that's going on at the Peoria Riverfront Museum. On Saturday, December 16th, is Star Wars Day, and there are crafts, costume contests, and all kinds of other things going on. You can build your own lightsaber. And at 2 o'clock, I'm going to have a lecture on Star Wars and mythology where I'm going to talk about basically the different mythologies and how they've impacted Star Wars, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, etc. And I'm also going to try to explain the mythology of Star Wars now, how it stands, how things are connected, timelines, connecting the books and the comics. There's a lot of information to fit into that, and I think it'll be great. And I expect that some people who will be there maybe aren't as familiar with some of the overall arcing mythology. So it'll be wonderful to have a chance to talk with them and to help them understand this beautiful galaxy that we love so much. Before I bring in our guest co-host for show number 96 of Coffee with Kenobi, Tom is here before he does the news, and we're just going to talk a little bit about our amazing experiences last weekend in San Francisco, where we were fortunate enough to go to Lucasfilm and Rancho-Obi Wan. Now, I've been lucky enough to go to Lucasfilm on a number of occasions, this being my third trip and my second to Rancho. But for Tom, this was a brand new experience all the way around. So, Tom, what'd you think?
Well, hello. It's great to be on. I'm kind of taking a look around to be on the front part of the show. This is cool.
How do you like it?
Oh boy, it's been a few days since we've gotten back, Dan, and it still is kind of swimming in my head, and lots of people have been asking about the trip, and it's just been so much fun to share the stories of being at both Lucasfilm and Rancho-Obi Wan, but also it was my first time in San Francisco. So it was like a triple whammy for me. And the fact that we did it like whirlwind style, I mean, early morning and overnight flights, just wow. Okay.
It was crazy.
So
yeah, we started the trip, right? And we had to get to the airport very early. Let's say I think I picked you up at your house at 4:15 in the morning.
4:15. Yep.
Yeah. And then we got to the airport and we had to lay over in Chicago, and then we ended up, of course, in San Francisco. And when we landed, the person who was going to give us a tour of Lucasfilm, we had to meet that person in an hour, and that was from an hour from touchdown. So we were certainly scrambling, and the force was with us. We got there a few minutes late, but our host was very gracious and awesome. And Lucasfilm is, I mean, it's everything. It's tell people what it's like when you first see that Yoda fountain and just the whole experience.
Oh man, when we came around, we were kind of walking along the front of the buildings there, and I looked out. You could look down sort of the sidewalk there, and you saw is that a trellis up above? And it's just like, oh, he's there. And as you get closer, you see the fountain with a little guy up on top. And as you get closer, you recognize Yoda up there. And it's so cool because you see it in so many different places, like the beginning of the Star Wars show and in other just images of Lucasfilm. And to be there in person and hear the fountain coming down. And then right behind there, you see the doors, the entrance to Lucasfilm, and they're just calling to you. And so that was so neat. And to walk into those doors and open up, and you're greeted with R2-D2 sitting there, and over to your right hand side is the desk, and that says Lucasfilm all behind it. And it just sort of it kind of blew me away, and I was a little overwhelmed. And there are people in the doorway there, and of course, Dan, you know everybody, which is cool. That was a lot of fun. But for me, I was like, wow, this is so amazing and so much going on.
That was great fun. What people may not realize is that when you go to San Francisco, you can go to Lucasfilm and get a picture with the Yodas by the Yoda fountain, and you can go into the lobby and look around at the life-size Darth Vader, and then now they have a Death Trooper. It used to be Boba Fett, but now it's a Death Trooper. Now they have R2-D2 at the front. When I was there last time, it was Ashley Eckstein's Lego dress from San Diego Comic-Con from 2 years ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you just never know what's going to be there. And, it's all pristine and beautiful, and the way they've got it lit, you can sort of see the sky. And there's behind the lobby, there is a walkway that you have to have a pass to get through. And there's a lot of stunning stuff to see. When you walk around, tell everybody what you saw as you sort of walked around the buildings.
Well, some of my favorite things to see around the building were they have large, I forget what they're called, but it's the background art for several of the Lucasfilm matte paintings. Yes, thank you. Around the studio, and probably my favorite one was one of the first ones we saw, which was a matte painting of Coruscant. Just stunning, beautiful, and to see it right there in front of my eyes, it was so neat. And to look at the detail in that, and it just, it's different than seeing it on the big screen, because now it's, instead of being a film, it's a piece of art in front of you, and that was so cool. And then the other one that stands out to me is the backlit night sky or night vision of the E.T. scene where he's flying over the city, and while it hangs on the wall, it's a very dark image, but they've got, like I said, it's backlit, and you see the lights of the town back there behind. And then my favorite part is Matt pointed out over on the side of it is either a billboard or a drive-in movie showing Star Wars.
That's right.
Another part that I really enjoyed, besides the wall art, was the models that they had around in the hallways. In particular, I really enjoyed the U-wing model and the Y-wing model that were in the same case, that just had such great detail, and are just really neat to look at, and you can examine it. And I really liked that. And then there was another model in the main stairwell of a TIE fighter cockpit with the arms to the wings, but it did not have any wings on it, and it was sitting on a trailer, like it was going to be pulled into the set or something. And I don't remember the story behind that. Dan, do you remember what the story was behind that? Why it's sitting on the trailer?
Right. I don't remember the original reason why it was created. It might have just been, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate, but I do know that it was supposed to look like if the TIE fighter was real. So it built it to scale as if it would be taken around on a trailer, like an actual semi-tractor trailer. And doesn't that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right. And the reason that I remember now why they have it there is because the cockpit is large when you look inside of it. And one of the things that they had always heard was, well, there's not enough room for two pilots in the cockpit of a TIE fighter. And there's no, really it is. And here this model shows that there's plenty of room for multiple pilots. Well, I guess not an army of them, but, a couple pilots inside this TIE fighter cockpit. So that's why they have that model there, so that you can actually peer inside of it and see it's pretty spacious inside.
Which also explains why in Star Wars Rebels sometimes there's scenes where there are multiple people in the cockpit.
Right, exactly. And then in that same area, a couple other features that was really neat, and I was glad were on display. They had storyboards. They have a binder of storyboards from Return of the Jedi, and the particular piece that was on display was a storyboard of the speeder bike chase on the moon of Endor. And it was just neat to see the original storyboard there, and then all of the detail that goes into each board. Underneath, they have like procedures and a little description of the shot and what's happening in the shot underneath there, and that was really neat. And then inside that same display in that stairwell, do you remember this? They had the huge film editing component that has the camera and a couple different cameras and reel-to-reels and an area where they can overlay the background along with the film on top of it. And it was just a very complicated, and it looked ancient. I don't know how old it actually is. I think, and I don't remember, he said that there was a film on there, but I don't remember what the film was that was actually on there. Do you remember that? Was it the Ten Commandments? It was the Ten Commandments.
Oh, yep, you're right.
Was on there.
Yes.
So, because I think they had a poster of the Ten Commandments up on the wall next to it. But it's this huge piece. I mean, when you talk about, from analog to digital, this thing is gigantic as an editing piece.
Right. Oh, it's huge.
But what a great
stuff kind of all through the hallways, don't they? They have like different pieces of film lore from basically anything that Lucasfilm or Industrial Light and Magic has worked on. In fact, there's one hallway that it's just lined with movie posters professionally framed of every single movie that ILM has worked on. And then when you get to the end of the hallway, they have basically at the end of each filming, they have the crews that they take pictures of that's themed to whatever movie that they just worked on, and that was really a lot of fun too.
That's right. I'd forgotten that. Yeah, and the crew photos are typically in the theme of that movie. Yeah,
and that also in that room, close by the room, they have a Han Solo and Carbonite, of course. Then they have a Jar Jar Binks in Carbonite too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was really neat.
So if you had to say what your very favorite thing was about Lucasfilm, tell me your favorite thing about it.
Wow. the ambiance. I mean, it was just so cool to be in that space. And as we started with our conversation, just entering with Yoda on the fountain, and all that, and just seeing the Star Wars lore, but also the film history. I guess maybe that was my favorite part is just the film history, because we often are so focused on Star Wars, and I when I think Lucasfilm, I think Star Wars, but Lucasfilm is so much more than just Star Wars, and I think just kind of opening my eyes to how much more Lucasfilm is than the Star Wars story. That might be my favorite part.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well said. Well said. And when you said that, it reminded me of, we got to see one of the screen-used, Holy Grails from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And across the Coronado. Things like that are just incredible.
Yeah, those are nice surprises.
So let's talk about the store. I'd heard for years about the Lucasfilm store, and I've been in it a couple times now, and every time I go, you just feel like you're sort of in. It's sort of like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when he first walks in and he sees the chocolate river and there's the Oompa Loompas. That's how I feel every time I walk in that room.
Yeah, what fun that was. And my favorite part, and I got a picture of it, was as you enter, there's a life-size Boba Fett action figure standing there to greet you, which is so cool. But yeah, you walk around and it's like, I'd like to have that, and oh, that's neat, and you feel like this is a once in a lifetime, and there's that feeling of that, and so you just feel like you need to buy up the store, and you walk past. And yeah, we kind of did. And they encourage that because they come and say, hey, we'll put that up at the counter for you. And so they empty your hands and you're like, oh, I've got nothing in my hands. I better go buy some more.
That's right.
And, but picking up the Lucasfilm items, like I got the zip down sweatshirt that has Lucasfilm. And of course with that, you have to have a Lucasfilm hat that's sitting here in the office next to me. It is the rule. And of course, being on Coffee with Kenobi, I need to have my Lucasfilm coffee mug to drink when we're recording and listening to the show. So I got those things, and then picked up a few things for my family, like a stuffed porg. Now, stuffed animal porg, I don't want to be confused with, we're cooking something for dinner tonight. Right. But the stuffed animal porgs that my girls just absolutely adore and love, and then I was wowed and amazed at their selection of Lego and Funkos. That was cool.
Yeah, they have a ton of great things there. They have a section for stuff from the crew when they made some of the films. They actually had some T-shirts from Thor Ragnarok too for crews that worked on that. And they have a place where they have a number of things with the Lucasfilm logo on it, like coffee mugs and T-shirts and polos and a number of hoodies and different sweatshirts, and they're all very, very high quality too, by the way. Very, very.
They are.
Nice. And then they have, as you said, a huge wall of Legos, and they have Black Series and action figures, and it's just, and they've got a lot of higher end items too. It's a great place. It's really an awesome place to be if you're a Star Wars fan. So do
you ever walk away from the store with some regrets of something that you didn't pick up?
Yeah, actually, when I was there last year, there was a really cool Lucasfilm black windbreaker for like rain and stuff, and I didn't buy that, and it wasn't there this time, so I was like a little disappointed. But yeah, it's probably better to leave with a little bit of regret because it means you still have some money in your wallet.
This is true. Yeah, indeed.
So then later in that weekend, we went and saw Thor Ragnarok, which was amazing. To me, the funniest Marvel movie that I've ever seen, including Guardians. And
in my eyes, like surprisingly good. I was not expecting it to be so great.
Absolutely, I agree. And we met up with my cousin for breakfast on Saturday morning, went up and down Lombard Street, the famous Crooked Street, and then we went to Imagination Park in San Anselmo and saw the Lawrence Noble, Yoda, and Indiana Jones statues.
That was fun, and I'm so glad that you were aware of that, because you could drive through the town a dozen times and never know that little park and behind that tree that was changing colors are Indiana Jones and Yoda. And Indiana Jones is gazing out over the park in the streets, on the street side of the fountain that they are standing in, and greets you into the little area where it was kind of nice. I mean, there were several people sitting, and a mom and a son were eating lunch there, and a couple people were visiting and just chit-chatting. And so it was a nice kind of small town home feel. But here are these great film icons hanging out, but in the fountain, just to be gazed upon. And so the detail on Indiana Jones is really neat. He's standing holding a whip, just in his very iconic fedora hat and his sleeves rolled up, and looked awesome with his satchel on his side. That was really neat. And then right behind him was Yoda, and we got lots of nice pictures. And Dan, I'm glad that I started taking some detailed shots, because you missed that Indy was standing over a half-buried skull.
That's right. It was. The detail that Lawrence Noble put into these is great. And the Yoda statue is the same one or that they have at Lucasfilm, but it's just cool that they have it here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were really neat to see. And, of course, it didn't hurt that it was an absolutely beautiful day to go for that little walk. And
you're right, too. You could drive through that town a number of times and not know that it was there. And it's sort of there, and sort of in the middle of all the small buildings. It's a nice little town, and it was just very serene and relaxing, and just you just feel like when you could go there and all your troubles would just go away for just a little bit, because it's just a nice ambiance. So
that is so true. And how did you find that?
That was on StarWars.com. Steve Sansweet wrote an article about that when they were dedicating and building that, which is a perfect transition to Rancho-Obi Wan and the Gala for 2017, which of course is the world's largest collection of Star Wars memorabilia certified by the Guinness Book of World Records. And Rancho-Obi Wan is just, it's everything that you think it is, that you hear that it is, and more. Tell me your overall experiences with Rancho.
It was fantastic. It was like walking into a Star Wars dream. I wish that I could have done it when I was 8 years old. I wouldn't, oh my gosh, can you imagine running around there as an 8-year-old? Just the hardest part would be not to touch anything, of course. And even as a much older than 8-year-old, sometimes it was hard not to touch. But it was so full, just so full of Star Wars memorabilia that I don't know, Dan, how many times we walked back and forth between all those rooms, and every single time I would find dozens of new things that I hadn't seen the first time I walked through or the last time that I walked past. And so I think some of my highlights for this were, when you walk in that hall, that original hallway, well, you walk up the stairs, and on your right-hand side is the collection of all those action figures. That was just to feast your eyes on that and all of those. And I have to say, it inspired me when I got home to order the little plastic stands for my action figures. And so I am going to start in my office, start displaying my original action figures now that I can get them to stand up without them dominoing over every time I bump my desk or something. But that was really neat. But what I wanted to say was, when you walk down the hallway, two things. One, on the left-hand side, you walk in, and you told me about this, and whatever you said was not enough to prepare me. Of course, being a librarian, I walked into the Rancho-Obi Wan library that was absolutely, positively, to my eyes, everything Star Wars in this library. A 2-room, packed Star Wars collection of the
beautifully
novels.
Organized.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And of course I noticed that, and some fantastic little treats, like the bookends that are the Han Solo and Greedo on either side of the books at their meeting in the cantina. So of course it inspired me to think, of course, who shot first. My thought was who read which book first. But then what I really enjoyed seeing was and it was kind of around a corner and down at like shin level. You had to kneel down to find it, but it was all of the sheet music for so many different Star Wars scores of music down there, for the piano, for guitar, for all sorts of different instruments, sheet music for all of that. And it kind of took me down memory lane because I recognized the companies of some of these as being the sheet music companies that my dad would purchase music for, that he would play on the piano. And so it was really neat to see that collection of sheet music that was kind of important to our family. But then once coming out of there and turning left and going down the hall to the sort of one of the main collection rooms, you'll look down the stairs at this amazing display. It's a circular display where at the bottom it has a glass case that goes all the way around with hundreds of stormtroopers lined up in perfect lines, pinwheeled around, and then up the center in about probably a maybe 10-foot canister. I guess, I don't know, that's not quite the right term I'm looking for.
No, that makes sense.
It's a glass canister of packaged Star Wars figures, and all the way around, and probably 50 to 100. I don't know. That's a vague, large guess of a number. But all the way around this are packaged Star Wars figures through the history of Star Wars, that I'm trying to remember. The docent told us, was this on display at one of the celebrations? And do you recall that?
No, it was something that they did through Toys R Us, through, I believe it was Force Friday or something to that effect.
Okay.
A promo, and they offered it to Steve. And, of course, he took it, and he should have, because it's gorgeous. And what it is, it's the carded figures, like you said, but it's from the original telescoping lightsaber Luke Skywalker all the way through the Ewoks line from the animated Ewok series. It's every Kenner Star Wars action figure, mint in package, and it's gorgeous. It's my favorite thing. Well, either that or the library. They're just amazing.
Yeah, they were completely stunning, but so many other neat things. Of course, I was really interested in areas that we couldn't go to, and so I kind of poked my camera down and took pictures of the organization and just the immaculate organization, and in these little cardboard drawer boxes, action figures, all cataloged and numbered. And I found that to be, that just made me happy to see that organization, that this massive collection has that type of organization. Because again, you walk down the main aisle where those shelves are on your left and your right, and it's just so full of all of these things. And it's fun to see things that you've had or have somewhere in a cardboard box, or things that I didn't even know that existed. And I don't know, do you have some favorites that you saw this year?
Well, it's fun because there are a lot of things that are the same, but they always have new things, because not only is Steve finding new things from new releases of Star Wars memorabilia and collectibles, but he has such a warehouse of stuff that's not even at Rancho right there that he rotates in and out, so that's really fun to see. I really like seeing the boxes of the old Star Wars costumes from the late 70s. And I couldn't even see what inside the boxes per se, but they were stacked up, and I'm going to put a picture of it on Instagram, of our CWK Instagram. And just seeing the descriptions, Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, and it's those old plastic costumes with the little masks with the little rubber band, basically,
right,
with the little nose. So like that just makes me happy, because all of this stuff, at its core, at its essence, brings back a memory associated with Star Wars and growing up and family, and I think that's why Rancho-Obi Wan is so endearing and it's just timeless, because there's so many memories attached to Star Wars, and collectibles are a gigantic lens through which we embrace those memories, and it just everywhere you go, then not only do you have your stories, but your friends will tell you their stories, but what they are reminded of when they see this, or the volunteers there would tell you stories about the collectibles too. So there's just a lot of ways to enjoy the stuff and to just kind of drink in the nostalgia. Now, there were a ton of other people there, and one of the things I was most excited about for this trip was you getting to talk to these people and meet them face to face. Since you've been, our CWK newsman, you've talked to quite a few people. Who do we see?
Oh, well, let's see. Where do you start? it was nice to finally meet the crew from is it Skywalking Through Neverland?
Yeah, Sarah and Richard Wolofsky.
They were they were a lot of fun to visit with, and during the auction we stood back in the corner with Brian Sims.
That's right.
And that was fun to visit with him. And then, I'm trying to think who else.
We got
our friend at Jedi News.
James Burns.
James Burns was there, and that was fun to. Yeah, that was fun to catch up with him. And I'm at a loss of
Mark Newbold from the brand new names. Tracks was there. He surprised us. That was cool.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And he was doing the Jedi pop or the balloon pop fun.
That's right. And we also were in line for food, and we started talking with Duncan Jenkins, a very famous Star Wars collector and author, and what an awesome guy he was, getting his tips on stuff and talking about our collections together, which was really great. And then we spent quite a bit of time chatting with Matt Martin and his girlfriend AJ, so that was very fun. Matt's easily one of the coolest guys in Star Wars, just a really laid back, nice, friendly guy, and he obviously knows his stuff. He's in the story group, but he's awesome. And then Justin was there. Justin, who of course is in charge of Star Wars social media, which is great. And there were just a lot of people from the 501st. Marcus Doring was there. Cole Horton, author Cole Horton was there. There are just so many people to talk to. I was telling my wife, we're busy and we have lots of stuff going on in our lives. So when I run into people that I know through Star Wars and Star Wars fandom, they really are your friends. And I see some of them about as regularly as I do my friends that live in the same town as me. So you've got actual, positive relationships with people, which is, to me, what Star Wars is all about.
Right. And Dan, how could we forget to mention the conversation we had with Steve Sansweet?
That's right.
In the photos we got in front of the replica Jawa sandcrawler treads, which
was cool. And then they have a scale life-size land speeder, Luke's land speeder. So we had some fun with that. And yeah, Steve was great. I mean, Steve, one of the things that I think makes the Rancho-Obi Wan Gala so powerful and impactful is that it's like Celebration, but it's really not, because there's just a level of friendliness and intimacy because you're all there together just celebrating the collection and Steve and Star Wars and fandom in general. So you legitimately get long pockets of time to talk to people that you've admired online or talked to on Twitter or Facebook or what have you. And it creates a really nice, friendly atmosphere. It's just a good aura, a good vibe to be in.
It is. And I look forward to visiting with all of those people on the show right here, as well as hoping to get to see them again face to face and share our stories.
Absolutely. So we will definitely check back in with you a little bit later for our Star Wars news.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee is the co-host of Lattes with Leia and the Arkham Sessions, Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
Hello.
Hello there, friend. It's good to chat with you.
Hi, friend. I'm so happy to chat with you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Your show with Amy has just been amazing to listen to. You just had the new episode drop last week. And how much fun is it to do that show with Amy?
I just have to say it doesn't feel effortful. Like, it doesn't feel like work at all, in the sense that we just sit down. We have, we don't ever have lattes. That's kind of the joke of the show, is that it's called Lattes with Leia, and we talk about what beverage we're drinking, and usually it's like tea or some kind of flavored water. And we've got listeners who are in on this joke, and occasionally we do have a latte, but we love doing the show. We take an opportunity just to relax and talk about the things we love about Star Wars. We have an authentic conversation about how we feel, our real opinions. We are not, we're not tethered to any particular, any particular like product or idea, or even like light side, dark side. We have in-depth conversations about kind of our affinities, and our dialogues usually get pretty interesting, I think. And it's so much fun because it really does feel like we're just sitting at a coffee shop or in the living room just talking about Star Wars.
Absolutely, which is definitely the goal of this show as well. And you two do it about as well as possible, because you can tell, for one thing, you obviously both know your stuff. And you both genuinely like chatting with each other, so it's nice to kind of be a fly on the wall to hear the amusing things you two come up with.
Well, thank you. We really enjoy it. And I always say, not to like pit us up against other, I know there's lots of different podcasts. With Star Wars, we have such a big family. I know we're part of a podcast family. We just feel like we're adding to the conversation. Right. And we know there's so many different places you can go for news and for, analysis of a particular trailer or rumors about what's going on, comics. Like there's so much going on out there. And we really often just talk about like, what do we love right now? And what's exciting for us about the fandom. And we leave some of the other more structured stuff to other shows because they do it quite well. And we found a really nice place in the community. So, thanks to you, thanks to our listeners, we are really enjoying the experience. Good.
Well, here. That's awesome. And I think when people say to me, and Dennis, our other co-host, Dennis will introduce in a quick second here, people ask me what is the number one thing I should do if I start a podcast, and I always say, well, obviously you need to have a little niche, but more important than that, you just have to be yourself and unabashedly put yourself into your show, because that really is what makes it unique. Also joining us is the co-host of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, and CWK blogger, Dennis Keithley.
Hey, Dan. It's great to be here. It's good to talk to you again.
You as well, bud. And you obviously have a very successful podcast as well. And how has the experience with Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels been for you?
It's been quite interesting. Unlike Lattes with Leia, we do a bit more of a structured approach where we try and plot out some segments and some skits on a weekly basis. And then we just added recently another Coffee with Kenobi blogger, Jay Krebs, as our third host, and then we've started doing a fashion and lifestyle segment with her. And so it's been a lot of fun. There's always plenty of Star Wars topics to discuss on a weekly basis. And Andrea's right. There's such a wealth of Star Wars podcasting right now that you can find something for just about any taste that's out there.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, we have a great opportunity here because I am able to talk with both of you today. And I wanted to bring up something that has really struck me over the past week, and am looking forward to hearing what you both have to say. So over the last week and a half, I've started the huge unit on Star Wars for my mythology class with seniors. And I love teaching this class. I love mythology and storytelling anyway. It's one of my favorite things about education. But Star Wars is, of course, the great modern myth, and mythology brings people together because it shows what we value as a culture and as a people. So I'm watching this with my students, and I would say, honestly, probably 75 to 80% of my students have not seen the original Star Wars, which is fascinating.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're watching, and the questions they get, like I had a student who thought that C-3PO was Han Solo, so this is where we're at on the Star Wars knowledge. But we're working on it. And honestly, as I tell them, I don't care if you like Star Wars. I don't care if you know what a lightsaber is. I care that you're critically thinking and you're seeing the connection between this and our culture, what we value. So we're talking about this, and as we're going through just the opening crawl, and of course, the Tantive 4 comes through, and then the Star Destroyer cruises across, and we start talking about cameras and angles. And I start thinking about Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which we finished last week for our CWK book study, and start thinking about conversations I've had with different Star Wars fans. And it struck me the awesome responsibility that the story group at Lucasfilm has, connecting all these tissues and all these threads together. I mean, look at Rogue One, how beautifully, of course, it connects with A New Hope, and on both of your shows you've talked about that quite a bit. and very eloquently too, I might add. And then we have what we have with the comics, and when I see Leia react to Alderaan blowing up and knowing through Leia, Princess of Alderaan, what went into, because I feel like Leia, Princess of Alderaan is probably the best snapshot into what life is like for her and her family and just that planet anyway. And the impact of these things is just really monumental. I realize I'm kind of all over the place, but what do you both think about that?
I'm so sorry for coughing. I'm reacting to all of the
right.
How many people have not seen Star Wars? No, I'm kidding. I think it's exciting. I think the idea of being introduced to Star Wars as a developing person, as an adult, as an emerging adult, I think that's a great experience. I think there's lots of opportunity for exploration of what is this mythology, and the non-judgmental approach of like, you don't have to like it. You know, you may not like it, but it might impact you in really amazing ways. That's my first reaction to this.
You know, the point you made about Leia, Princess of Alderaan, reminds me that before that book and maybe the Princess Leia comic that Marvel put out recently, I don't think Alderaan really had a soul. But these additional materials that they put out really give weight to that planet and the people there, and make that scene in A New Hope when the Empire destroys an entire planet of people have that much more gravitas. It suddenly becomes more than a cool special effect. It becomes something that has some emotion behind it.
Right. The pathos quadruples because of the things that have been inserted back into the canon to flesh these things out and give that pathos that I think is a part of important storytelling. And then you could even look at the famous climactic duel between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, which of course for years, you know, obviously the choreography is not the same as Ray Park and the Phantom Menace, and nor should it be, because of where these two characters are in their own personal arcs. But when I watched it today with my students, I started thinking about, you know, it would be fair to say that Obi-Wan Kenobi is just, while he's obviously as cool as the other side of the pillow, he's still meeting Anakin for the first time in a very, very long time. And the emotion of that is so powerful, plus being with Luke, who he thinks is the chosen one. And that combined, and when I watch Vader fight, I think Vader knows he could take this guy out any minute. He's savoring this. He's toying with him like a cat does with a mouse. At least that's just sort of how I interpret it this time around.
I remember back in, 97, 98, when the special editions of these movies came out.
97.
I was the auditor at a hotel, and so I worked late nights, and there was a VCR set up in the lobby. And so I had these movies, and I brought them in. No one ever hung out in the lobbies, but as soon as I started showing Star Wars, everyone was there on a nightly basis, sitting down, watching these movies. And I remember a family that had some young kids, and they came in from their day's activities, and then, oh, Star Wars is on, and the kids were, well, what's that? Again, you were talking about bad parents earlier, but they started. We were on the Death Star, and they got to that scene between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and when Vader took Kenobi down, the kids were just like, "Whoa, what happened? Did he disappear? Did he fall through a trap door?" It was just, the reaction was incredible at that time.
I think it's really kind of interesting, and I know, Dan, you probably explore this a lot, how mythology transforms and it changes over time. And so, you know, how we may have learned about these characters and the narratives through whatever means that was, through our maybe our parents, our older siblings, the media, our friends. We had all these different introductions to whatever Star Wars is to us, and we hold a narrative about not just what the story is, but an overarching a mythology. And so that is going to shift over time. And so it's interesting that now with more storylines and more characters and the sequencing of learning about this can happen in various ways, so that the mythology actually does evolve and it changes and in some ways pretty significantly from what we knew it to be.
Very much so. And that I think is why we see yet again that George Lucas is in fact a genius, because he laid some groundwork that good, smart, passionate people are able to dive into and sort of play in that sandbox and add to the magic. You know, sometimes I feel like, Andrea, you probably see this all the time in comics, there are sometimes when writers take on a beloved character or a beloved concept in a certain mythology and try to put their own spin on it so much that it becomes something much different, and that's not always in a positive way. And I feel like, for the most part, Star Wars has been doing a nice job of adding without trying to create some sort of a stamp that doesn't make it feel like the original product. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think about the different ways that you can connect and relate to certain characters. Like my introduction to Darth Vader was really pivotal and very important to my fandom, the entirety of my fandom. And to think that there are folks that are introduced through this character by meeting Anakin and kind of going through that development with him and understanding like, oh no, this isn't just a bad guy. This isn't like this mysterious bad guy. This is a real kind of sad, traumatized boy. And so that's almost like a different, as I mentioned, like a different mythology, a different narrative to follow than the one that maybe I hold.
Right. Yeah. There's a texture there that is definitely something that brings a unique quality to him besides just the imposing black armor and, you know, spectacular design of his helmet and things of that nature. There's also a point, and one of the things I've emphasized throughout this course, because we started with Greek mythology and then Roman and then Norse mythology, and then we made it to Star Wars. And one of the things I want them to always see is how females are represented and treated, because the way they are valued in Norse culture, in Norse mythology, is vastly different from Greek mythology. So we're talking about feminism and sexism and just important things that I want them to understand. And we get to the scene where they get out of the trash compactor, and Han Solo says, in his Han Solo way, you know, if we can just avoid any more female advice, we can get out of here. And when that happened, a bunch of students started to rumble and talk. And so I paused it and I said, tell me your reactions right now. And one person said, Han Solo is sexist. And I said, okay.
Wow.
Right? Right? And I said, is Han Solo sexist? And so that brought this wonderful conversation about, is that because of the culture when this film was written? How is she taking this reaction? Is he viewing her as an equal? What's exactly going on here? And it was fascinating. What would you both say to that?
Well, to whether he's sexist?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that he is, but I mean, that is certainly a sexist comment. I mean,
part of the way I view that relationship is it was the kids in the neighborhood where the boy has a crush on the girl, and so he does horrible things to get her attention, which is part of that. And I think it's kind of become a trope in the Han Solo, Princess Leia relationship that they can't just talk. It's always banter. In the comics, one of the things I've always noticed is they can't portray Han and Leia without him leaning over her, either pointing a finger at her or jerking a thumb back at himself, and her standing rigid, just slightly leaning backwards, looking up into his face. And then they have snarky things to say to each other. And that all stems from this relationship that started in that the detention block and then went into the trash compactor. And then as they got out of that trash compactor, I mean, it's certainly a harsh thing for Han to say because he's such a cocky guy, self-sure, doesn't trust anyone's advice but his own, maybe Chewbacca's. But, Leia, when she gets out of the trash compactor, she leads the escape. Right. She's the one that gets them out of there. She was never really the damsel in distress. She was just she just needed an opportunity.
And again, for the record, I don't think Han Solo is sexist, but I think that comment is definitely one that I'm glad that my students questioned. I think that's important.
I think they're astute. I think that they are observing something that makes them uncomfortable. I do think that cinema has had that trope for decades, right? That kind of like, this is what the male kind of, that character, that rogue should be. That's how they should be. And so I think it's a few things. I think it's partly, yes, he's playing that role for us, and he's also playing that role for them, for her. And a part of it is his own, like an overlay. A part of it is acting and playing that part, like Han Solo playing that part. And I think that, of course, this character evolves a bit over time, and he becomes a little bit more dynamic and isn't just one dimensional. But I think that's a really good observation. Would that writing really work in today's cinematic landscape? I don't think in that version it would really work out. Do we like it? Like, yeah, I mean, as a female, it's really interesting because I've always liked Han Solo, and I've always found that to be pretty dreamy. But then, looking at it now, like, gross. She's the one who grabs the gun and gets them out of trouble. She's the one who's pretty independent, and it's interesting that the juxtaposition is this pretty empowered, bright female, and this guy who's taking on this, like, kind of this old-fashioned response to her.
Right.
And I think that's how he's trying to flirt. And I'm okay with that wink to us. Like, does this really work? And it kind of does. And as you're mentioning, we see that dynamic in other representations of their love affair. And interestingly, if you read, I think it's The Princess Diarist, if you read some of a memoir that Carrie Fisher has published, some of this actually happened, some of that dynamic played out in real life.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting to see that on screen and to see it as realistic, in the sense that that's a move, that's a tactic, that's a thing that guys do to get a woman's attention. Is it sexist? I don't know. I think those are attempts to try, to get attention and to flirt. And I'm not sure that it's sexist in that version, because I don't think that's his authentic belief. I don't think that's that character's authentic belief.
Oh, I agree with you. Well said. Hey, it's like you're a doctor or something. No,
I know, right?
I really like that. And that's what I want my students to think. I want them to question. I want them to challenge what they are told so they can come up with their own point of view. And, no, he's not sexist, and this is definitely flirting. But it's fair to say that comment in general, because I guess, to me, sexism is when you take a gender stereotype and propagate it. And he's not doing that. He could have easily said, if we can avoid any more royal advice, right? Maybe that would have come across as more of a timeless thing that wouldn't kind of rub you the wrong way at first. But there's innocence there, and there's charm, and like you said, life imitates art, imitates life between those two, and then Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So we will go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was trying to think of any comparisons in the most recent two Star Wars movies, and I couldn't come up with anything. I think
there isn't. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is on Jakku, the way that Rey gets addressed when she's trying to sell stuff, and the whole issue with the droid comes up, and she gets girl, that's about as close as I could think. So I don't think we would see that type of reaction nowadays if A New Hope was being written today.
I agree. No,
and in fact, I think some of that kind of like control and pushiness comes from the villain. So I think that I agree. I'm not sure that would work in the same way, and I think many viewers, both male and female, would be a bit uncomfortable, just like your students were, if that were part of the dialogue or part of the trope.
Right. And it's so wonderful because, as I said, many of them haven't seen it, so they're the ones who are reacting the strongest. So by the time we get to The Force Awakens, I'm going to ask them. I'm going to bring this up again and say, how do you feel about them now? And I think it's going to be, actually through Empire Strikes Back, I'm sure that will be a joy to kind of experience as well. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to experience. So let's go ahead and take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to check in with DiCo about what's going on in the world of Star Wars video games. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee with Kenobi is sponsored by Penguin Random House Audio. Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Phasma and Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you'll have plenty to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now. Coffee with Kenobi is also sponsored by the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and much more. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. And if you're finding yourself thinking, how can I help Coffee with Kenobi out? I really like this show and I want to do my part. Well, we appreciate that and we appreciate you. And one of the ways you can do that is to be a CWK Patreon contributor. I want to give a very special shout out to Tyler Wiggins, Ben Elkington, Dennis Keithley, Terry Lee, Angela Souse, Aaron Harris, Mediocre Jedi, Connie Shee, BJ Smith, Christian Dale, Nick DiCo, Adam Leonard, Jim Capron, Jason Hall, Mark Suter, Mike Audette, Eric Struthers, Jared Cantor, and Brian McKinney. The Patreon page is something that helps us out in a lot of ways, including producing our show and distributing it through the RSS feed, which is how you send your show to different podcast catchers like iTunes and Google Play, etc. It also helps with the equipment and the upkeep. If you contribute, because there are different levels you can contribute, and there are different rewards that come with this. For $5 or more a month, you can get a special mention on the show like you just heard, and we will follow you on social media. And you also become a member of the CWK Discord community, which is basically a message board that's exclusive to just our CWK Patreon contributors. For $10 a month or more, you also have the same things I just mentioned. Plus, you can set up your own Discord text channels, and you get more insights and different access to different posts that we have. 35 more a month, 50 a month, and more. The contributions go on and on. But the more you contribute, the more opportunities you have. You can get coffee mugs, CWK t-shirts. You can also, by the way, get a chance to co-host a show with us, depending on how much you contribute. And be sure to check out our webpage and go to the Patreon page to see the incentives and see the opportunities for you, because, as I mentioned, you can not only host the show with me, but you could do it one time, twice in 1 month, or you could do the entire month, all 4 shows with me in 1 month and another guest host. And that's really fun. One of the best things about the show is being able to meet and talk with and converse with each of you. And this is one way to guarantee that's going to happen. So be sure to check out our links on the webpage or the show notes for more information. We're back, and we are here with Nick DiCo, our CWK Star Wars video game expert. Nick, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. What's going on with Star Wars video games these days?
Oh, lots of fun stuff. Battlefront 2 comes out in a week for those of us that have pre-ordered it. So at a time, we're listening next week. Hopefully everybody is console deep into their Battlefront 2 experience. And there's been a couple other updates through the mobile platforms. And if you haven't saw from last Friday on November 3rd, our favorite retired video game, Disney Infinity, actually came out with kind of new toys at the Disney store.
Okay, I saw those, and the notion of these coming back was thrilling to me, because in my Star Wars office I have all the IKEA shelves, thanks to Amy Ratcliffe's recommendation, actually. And they're fully displayed, and they look awesome. And then I saw the images of these new ones, and I feel like they're like ones used. They just don't feel like the same idea. Plus, they're articulated, and I don't know. They're just not the same. It just doesn't seem like their heart's in the right place, but it's just the execution's not there.
I think we're going to disagree for the first time in like a couple of years, my friend. So.
I like it. That's fine. Tell me.
I'm on Nick's side.
I'm on Nick's side. Everybody choose sides.
Okay, look at the Rey from the original line, and then look at this Rey. Rey looks so much better than the original. Dre, have you seen these?
I've actually not seen these updated ones. I'm actually doing some browser searching to see if I can find it. Yeah. I tend to, so I don't know if this is helpful, but I tend to like more cartoony. It really depends, but have they gone more cartoony, and are they more simplified, or it sounds like maybe they're more articulated? I'm not sure.
I think it's a little bit of yes, all of the above. I mean, I like the cartoon style because it's kind of sophisticated. It almost looks like it's three-dimensional animated, but there's nice detail there. I feel like these new ones. Well, enough of my babble. Why do you guys like them?
Well, they're a bit larger than the original characters, I believe. My kids had all of these, and I was always envious of them. I'm not a big action figure collector, and I wouldn't go into all the Disney properties to get these, but I've considered picking up a couple of them just to have sitting around on my desk. They look like something fun to fidget with while I'm recording a podcast or doing something else.
They're gorgeous. I mean, they're just absolutely stunning. If they made like life-size maquettes of them, or not life-size, that's a little going on. It's crazy, but like the statue sizes, or ones you get to sit on your desk. I mean, they're really nice. Trey, have you found them yet?
I think I'm looking at the older ones.
I'm gonna find it and I'll send you a link in the.
Yeah, send me a link. I have a brand new office to decorate, and something I'm asking a lot of my friends and colleagues is like, hey, especially around Star Wars, what do you recommend as something that is displayable, but I wouldn't mind like if it broke or if someone took it, I'm keeping all my sideshow stuff at home. So these might actually, so these might fit within that category. And from the ones I'm seeing, which I think are the updated ones, they look great.
Let's see. Okay.
I actually have I have some that are unboxed in my hand because I bought some extra ones for friends when I was in Orlando recently. But I forgot I even had them still. I was like, I'll look them up too and see what they look like. But yeah, so it is kind of really odd, Dan. Like from one perspective, this game was a lot of fun. The smaller, I guess they're like 3-inch, 2.5 non-posable figures were part of the game, and they were gorgeous. They were crafted and sculpted beautifully for all the characters from all the different sagas. But for me, I think the reason why I was really excited about this, because it's new Star Wars toys from kind of Infinity, but we're never going to get that game back apparently, was that they're just a little larger, and I can give them to my children now, so I can put the old ones away and actually display them now and not have them play with my toys. I can give them their own toys. So, but I think they look. I just like how they still look just like they did in Infinity, and it just kind of harkens back to the in between zone between like the cartoon articulated version for kids' toys, and then without getting into like the 62 points of articulation like the Black Series or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm also sending you the link to. Okay, look at Kylo Ren in this new version. And then look,
he was sold out. I couldn't find him, so I don't know how he looks.
When you look at this picture, you'll be glad that it was. And then you get there's the other one I sent. I found an Amazon picture of one, but it just seems more imposing and kind of captures the essence of Kylo Ren. And then in this new version, he just looks like a stick figure.
Well, I think there's a difference. Yeah, that these toys are not in the dynamic pose that the Infinity figures were. And the fact that they are posable here is going to, I think, cut back on some of the, artistic merit, maybe of them a bit, because that's what stands out to me is that in that first link you sent us of Rey the Stormtrooper and Kylo, none of them seem particularly dynamic the way they have them posed there. They just kind of seem, I don't know, unimposing.
Well, in my irrational yodeling here is probably because I love those figures so much, and I was so sorry to see that line canceled. And then I heard it's bringing it back, and I thought, oh, cool, I'll finally get a Hera to put up there with the rest of the crew of the Ghost. But I want them to look like these. Do you see the difference in the two?
Yeah, I think there's a, like, I don't know, continuity or consistency issue where once you combine them, I mean, Dan, is this what you're referring to? Like, you want the collection to match and you feel like it's going to be off?
That's exactly right. That's 100% right. Yes.
Yeah, I've had this problem with actually with Batman figures, the animated series lines where they've changed them. They've now gone back and they're a little bit more similar to the originals, but that's because the animation itself changed. So the toys changed as well. And it can be bothersome, especially if you're collecting them and you're displaying them together.
And you're referring to when Batman went from the blue to the black, and the lines were a little bit different when the animation shift, like season 3, right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it went from the animated series to like the New Adventures of Batman and Robin, right. And then the toys themselves went through a number of different shifts, and so it's interesting because once you get an affinity toward a certain style, then if it's changed, it's that like you're wrestling between wanting to complete your collection and wanting it to be consistent and tidy.
Right.
Collector's problems.
Exactly.
That's funny, Andrea. You mentioned collector's problems. I was thinking, here's the part we talk about video games, and we're talking about the collectibles. Welcome to, thank you, Star Wars. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you started out talking about Battlefront. There have been a ton of different things that have come out about Battlefront, and I know you both have played the beta of them. Have your thoughts kind of changed since a little bit of time has passed, or so let's kind of refresh our audience about what you both thought of the beta.
Oh, Andrea, go please. You first.
Yeah. Well, I played for a little bit. I was for folks who may not be familiar with it. You folks had the opportunity to play the multiplayer version on a couple of I guess planets is the best way to say it. And I played a few times on the capital city of Naboo, which is Theed. And what I said in our Lattes with Leia episode is that I found it to be visually stunning, like incredibly just beautiful. And I was getting distracted and lost by wanting my eyes were going to different parts of the screen just to take it all in and just to want to enjoy my surroundings. The interesting thing is that I found it to be quite challenging. I found that you needed to be really precise with your shots. I'm not good at Battlefront. I'm not a good player. So I found it to be difficult. And because during many of these games, my opponents were the droids, the battle droids. They're so little. They're like real thin. And so my target was like these tiny little things. Like this little rod was, miles away was my target. And I got a little frustrated with that. So to summarize this, I think it's a great game. I think just like any first-person shooter, it will, you'll get the hang of it and your skill will increase. You'll perform better over time. And I don't mind that challenge. I think it's going to be a great game.
Andrea, I totally agree. And you're like on the capital city of Theed for Naboo. I think my most liked tweet of all time is my screen grab of Queen Amidala and like her portrait in like in the palace or something like that. And it was like, look who I found finally, Padme Amidala in a video game. Yeah, and it was
nice.
But that was me looking around. It was me looking around at the pictures on the wall of the video game. So I totally agree. Like the game visually is stunning, and for folks that probably recall, this is the second iteration of the new Battlefront series that is downloadable and playable for PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. I don't know about Xbox, the newest one though. I'm not sure if it's playable for that yet, and then PC as well. So, but yeah, it comes out next week. If you pre-ordered it, I think you can pick it up on Tuesday of next week. Otherwise, I think the release date is Thursday or Friday. And it's from the beta that we had a chance to play for a few days. It's definitely an improvement in many different ways. It changes some things as well, especially how you upgrade your character and how you progress through the system. So you really kind of have to put a lot of time in to start unlocking some more abilities, which is nothing new to anything in video games, especially nowadays. But yeah, I myself personally loved the different classes of soldiers you can play. So you can be an officer, you can be a heavy duty soldier, and then the different types of ships that you can play as well. So if you were the Rebel Alliance, you could choose between an A-Wing, an X-Wing, and a Y-Wing, which was great. I can't remember the last time you could play as a Y-Wing in a video game. Or like TIE bombers or TIE interceptors, and really kind of runs the gamut for the whole Star Wars universe as a package deal. It's not just bits and pieces like Battlefront. I guess 1 is what we'll call it. The first Battlefront now of this new iteration was called. It's not just kind of a few things here and there. So, but yeah, lots of things have we're going to learn next week to see what they finally came out with and how it all is going to shake out.
It's definitely going to be fun to chat with you next month after you've had a bit of time to play the entire game. So I'm looking forward to that. Nick, where can people reach out to you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
Yeah, sure, definitely. You guys can find me at Nick DiCo, NickDico, and probably spending way too much time on my Xbox at night come next week through the end of the year. Maybe we'll see, playing this game.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, Nick.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
So we'll go ahead and take another break, and when we come back, Tom has news. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects, top-notch narrators, and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From Han Solo to C-3PO to Admiral Akbar, you'll recognize all of your favorite characters. Listen to movie tie-ins like Rogue One and The Force Awakens, to book titles such as Phasma and Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad, to classic audiobooks like William Shakespeare's Star Wars. With Star Wars audiobooks, you'll have plenty of Star Wars listening to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app features incredible images from many aspects of the saga, including the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, Rebels, The Force Awakens, and Rogue One. It's the quality you have come to expect from Topps. It's also easy to get into and really fun, too. Your favorite Star Wars characters, scenes, and moments are in every pack. To get started, download the app for free from iTunes or Google Play, and then be sure to open the app each day for free credits to spend on card packs from the Cantina. Plus, if you can't get what you're looking for, there's a place to trade with your friends as you complete your Star Wars collection. And if you're an experienced collector, there are exclusive cards, special inserts, and autograph opportunities for you to enjoy. Don't worry about missing the cards and sets you want either, as you can sign up for notifications right on the app. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps can be downloaded for free from iTunes or Google Play. Be sure to download the app and start your collection today. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is available now. And remember, these are the cards you're looking for.
We're back, and Tom is with us. Tom, of course, joined me at the top of the show to talk about our experiences in San Francisco. And now you've got your CWK newsman hat back on, and what do you have for us?
I do. Well, StarWars.com revealed this week an excerpt from the upcoming book release of Star Wars The Last Jedi, Canto Bight. Named for the casino city in The Last Jedi, Canto Bight is a collection of 4 novella-length adventures from the gambling world. In the excerpt from John Jackson Miller's The Ride, we meet Kal-Jak Somni, who is down to his last chance when he meets a trio of brothers that may change his luck. The excerpt describes gambling at its most desperate and seemingly shows a culture of characters who are oblivious to the troubles of the galaxy around them. Canto Bight is to be released December 5th.
Now, besides John Jackson Miller, who are the other authors on this book? Do you know?
Oh, man, I knew you were going to ask that. And I don't have that readily available.
Well,
One second.
That's okay. I mean, John Jackson Miller, would be worth the price of admission alone. I'm looking forward to this book. I have not read the excerpt yet. Have any of you?
I have not, but I too am looking very much forward to this. For another reason that John Jackson Miller's got a new story out. I really liked his previous work with A New Dawn and the Kenobi book that he did.
And I love the novella format too. I think it's more digestible because there's a lot of Star Wars books that come out, so you can get through this one a little quicker, maybe.
I was just going to say I read about this earlier this morning, and I'm very excited. This might be something I don't usually. You have to kind of limit your what you consume. Just there's not enough time in the day, and this might be something that would get to the top of my list.
I'm not familiar with the other authors. I just looked them up. They're Saladin Ahmed, Ray Carson, and Mira Grant. I don't think I've read anything by them before.
I'm not. That doesn't ring a bell right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Well, if this is anything like Tales from a Galaxy Far, Far Away, Aliens by Landry Q. Walker that came out right around when The Force Awakens premiered, then it's going to be dynamite.
Yeah, all this Journey to the Last Jedi stuff has been pretty good so far. And I liked when they did the lead up to The Force Awakens with the individual novels for Luke, Han, and Leia. And then they did that before The Awakening with stories for Rey, Poe, and Finn. I like these smaller, digestible books that just give a little bit more flavor to what's going on in the movie.
Yeah, and if the excerpt is anything to build off of, it's going to give us a nice picture of these creatures that live in this gambling city. So we'll move on to a special vinyl collector's edition, remastered original motion picture soundtrack of Star Wars A New Hope will be released December 1st. Walt Disney Records announced that the 3 LP set, and for some of you, that means long play album, is in celebration of John Williams' 40th anniversary of the classic movie score. On side A of album 3 is a 3D hologram of the Death Star, and side B has an etching of the 40th anniversary logo done by Tristan Duke, who Jack White fans may know from the work he did on the Lazaretto vinyl. Accompanying the album set is a 48-page hardcover book with rare behind-the-scenes photos and 2 essays, one about the impact of John Williams' masterpiece on the film by Jeff Bond, and the other about the early life of John Williams by Jeff Eldridge. You can pre-order the set now from Disney Music Emporium for $150.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's exactly. Well, my goodness, it sounds wonderful. But $150.
Dude, it's like I just threw tax on the floor for you all.
Yeah, you popped all of our expectations.
Look at that, and then ouch.
Well, and does anyone have? I'm assuming Tom, you have a vinyl player. But does anyone have a vinyl player?
No, I've seen them on sale around here recently, and I would have considered it for something like this, but that's a steep price tag for music that I already have in 3 or 4 other formats.
I actually ended up buying this. Everything's going to relate back to Batman for me. I ended up getting the LP set of the animated series music, which and I don't have a record player, so I think this might be in the same vein of like it could be just a collectible, something that might make someone really happy. I ended up framing the art and the the records, and it's on display. It's the Batman ones, and it looks really nice. So I don't know. Maybe that could be something to think about for some people.
No, I totally agree, and of course it should always come back to Batman. It very much should. Batman's amazing. That's what I was thinking too. It would be a nice collectible. You could frame it. The hologram of the Death Star, I'm sure, is breathtaking. So it's a really nice piece of view. Obviously, we all love John Williams, and especially if you're a John Williams fan, it would definitely be something to consider. That is steep, but I don't know. I mean, I've been wanting to get a vinyl for a long time. I've been buying the remasters of the Beatles albums on vinyl just because I love the Beatles so much. So this would be cool to have. Although for $150, I might be tempted to get a couple other things, or I don't know, but I definitely wouldn't disparage anyone from getting it because, like you said, Ray, it would be a really lovely thing to have on as a display piece.
Yeah, you could buy like 100 Infinity characters, or this is a no-brainer for me, actually. I don't know. I now that I've seen some of these pictures on Amazon, I would get the vinyl.
Yeah, for sure.
They do look great. And I will say, as you know, the librarian in me, Dan, I'm looking out for you here. That essay on the impact of John Williams' music in the movie sounds like it go right along with your lessons that you're working on right now in mythology, huh?
Hey, you had me at librarian. I like this. This is good.
Yeah. And we also have a record player in the library. Nobody knows it's there. But so if you were to pick this up, hey, we could scratch some tunes with that record player that's in the back room there.
I don't know if we want the word scratch involved with a $150 album.
Okay, we'll gently set the needle upon the disc. Yes, how's that sound?
It sounds better.
Oh, boy. And to wrap up, here is an update on a story we ran a few weeks back. The Star Wars show announced more details on Star Wars Galactic Nights, which will come to Disney's Hollywood Studios on December 16th, the day after the release of Star Wars The Last Jedi, in case anyone had forgotten that date. Fan favorite Warwick Davis is confirmed as the official host of the event. According to StarWars.com, David Collins will moderate a panel discussion inside Star Wars Galaxy's Edge featuring Scott Trowbridge, Robin Reardon, Chris Beatty, and Doug Chang with an exclusive sneak peek into the Star Wars-themed land. Star Wars Galactic Destinations will transform the Hollywood Tower of Terror into stunning displays of locations from across the galaxy. And hey, if you need more to wet your whistle, how about a red carpet welcome that includes the performance of Star Wars, A Galaxy Far, Far Away, stunning fireworks, a one-night-only panel to discuss the features of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, a DJ spinning tunes, Darth Vader and a legion of his famous troopers marching down Hollywood Boulevard, photos with Ewoks, stormtroopers, roaming droids, Star Wars-themed food, cats and dogs living together.
Total chaos.
So sorry that I just got out of hand there, but it looks like it's the gala of the year.
My goodness, you're killing me, Smalls. This is, Dennis and I hung out at the one in April, along with Corey and Jeff McGee, and it was an absolute ball. I've said many times on the show, it was one of my favorite Star Wars experiences that I've ever had, and knowing all these things that they're adding to it, just, oh man, I wish I could go again.
If I were in Orlando at that time, I would definitely be there. Beyond everything that you mentioned there, Tom, it was the fact that you had the park practically to yourself.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the capacity is of Hollywood Studios, but I think they capped it at something like 3,000 to 5,000 people. And that sounds like a lot, but when you spread them over that park, there's no waiting to get onto anything. The panel discussion that we had was Vanessa Marshall talking to John Knoll and can't remember who else was there. Yes, Alan Tudyk. Thank you. And that happened 4 times during the evening. The Aerosmith roller coaster had that Star Wars overlay, which is a lot of fun. If you wanted to, you could just make a round trip through Star Tours over and over and over again for 4 or 5 hours and have a blast doing that. So it's an incredible experience. And Dan, you're right. Just getting to go do it with friends made it even more special.
Drea, is this going to get you on a plane to Orlando for December 16th?
I was just going to say I'm going into my bank account right now and figuring out, putting some funds away. This is exactly the kind of thing I would love to do. And what better time to be living in than deciding between these kinds of events, being able to have these opportunities. So I'm just excited that this is a thing that we can all celebrate together. I don't know if I'll be able to make it out there, but I love the idea that I'll have friends that will have this experience, and who knows, maybe one day I'll be able to do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You would absolutely love it. And when you walk through, at least the one in April, they handed you this huge lanyard, and it had a sort of a scavenger hunt on the back of the lanyard where you had to go to different locations in the park, and at the different locations you get a sticker to put on your lanyard, which basically makes all of the posters of all the films. And the locations were like things as the Emperor's Throne, or you could go inside the trash compactor, and there's just all these great photo ops, and it was spectacular. And you mentioned, Tom, the red carpet. That the red carpet was all the way down Hollywood Boulevard, which is the main entrance to Hollywood Studios, and they just made you feel like special. And like you said, Dennis, the park, there were a lot of people there, but it was so spread out that it just wasn't a factor in any way. Every ride you could get on, including Toy Story Mania, which is typically 1.5 to 3 hours long, it was you walked right on it. So it's spectacular. If you're in the area, especially, and you love Star Wars, it's a really magical experience.
And the food, they had a lot of great Star Wars themed food over there as well. Churros. Yeah, and they had those Death Star glowing spheres that they put in your drinks as well. They managed to work the theme into absolutely everything.
Well, thank you, Tom, for getting on here and getting us ready to spend all of our money.
Oh, my pleasure.
We'll go ahead and take another break, and when we return, I will continue our CWK book study on Phasma with chapters 5 to 11. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee with Kenobi was sponsored by Penguin Random House Audio. Looking to catch up on the latest Star Wars books? Try listening to them on audio. Featuring sound effects and music directly from the movies, Star Wars audiobooks are the definitive listening experience. From brand new audiobooks such as Phasma and Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad to our blockbuster movie tie-in editions, you'll have plenty to keep you entertained. Visit penguinrandomhouseaudio.com/Star Wars for sample clips and to start listening now. Coffee with Kenobi was also sponsored by the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and now The Last Jedi. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. It's time to do our next round of our CWK coffee chat. This time, of course, we have moved on to the book Phasma, a fascinating book that just gets richer and richer and more intriguing with every page. We are on chapters 5 to 11 today. And V, of course, was the resistance spy that was captured by the First Order trooper we now know as Cardinal. And V is really, really wiped out by this time. She really is close to death, but she is working on Cardinal, and she thinks that she can get water and food from him. And this happens a lot through this entire section that we're looking at today. She starts to not necessarily like him, of course, but feel like he's not a terrible person. And I don't know how much of that is her delirium because of the terrible punishment that her body has undergone because of the shocks that Cardinal did when they originally met. But she's able to get him to take off his helmet multiple times, and he does bring her water. So we move back to Parnassus, and we find out, as V continues to tell the story to Cardinal, there was a child that was born in the sire, and that was an extremely rare thing because most children didn't survive pregnancy because either the minerals in the air, or lack of nutrients or nutrition. There were never any children, so one is named, or born, I should say, and is named Frey, F-R-E-Y, which I'm sure is not an accident, probably allegorical, we'll see. Phasma even makes a child-sized axe out of stone and driftwood for Frey, and it says that everyone in the Sire completely adores the child and dotes on it. Now, there is a rival group called the Claws that comes, and they are led by a Dug named Balder. Balder is not a friendly Dug by any stretch of the imagination. But we turn to page 42 because Phasma knows that Balder and his crew are wanting to attack and try to steal the child. And Phasma doesn't tell her brother, Keldo, that that's going to happen. The invasion does come, and a number of people from the Sire are killed. And really, realistically, Phasma could have prevented it, but she doesn't. And there's this huge sweeping scene. It's easy to say, or fair to say, that she's bloodthirsty. There's this huge battle, and she completely is more than a match for everybody, and she injures the Dug, which is an accomplishment because, as we know from the Phantom Menace, Dugs are able to walk on their hands and use their feet as well. And for the explanation of why she doesn't tell him, this is what she gives on page 42. I wasn't sure if it would work. We've always assumed that wounds fester because of the air, but I realized it's from the lichen on the rocks. Even touching it makes your fingertips go numb. So I pounded the lichen to make a paste and smeared it on my blades. That is why Balder weakened. Even Dug blood is no match for poison. Why did you not share this with us? Keldo says. We all could have benefited from this knowledge. And then she says, are you ashamed that I bested our enemy, saved a mother and child, and protected the Sire's territory? Or are you ashamed that I chose not to include you in my plans? It says Keldo carefully considered her as good leaders do. He knew that to lose his temper would be to lose face. We ruled together, Phasma. We all always have. He says earlier that he was ashamed of her. Remember, they're brother and sister. And I feel like their dynamic, as well as the notion that there is a child that is a savior, this is very biblical in a way. Because, of course, you've got a child as a savior, which is very Christian. And this child does not seem necessarily be a savior or a detriment, but it is a point that I think is going to be crucial as this book goes along. So let's keep our mind open to what that could be. But Phasma and her brother Keldo, it very much is almost like kind of a burgeoning Cain and Abel relationship, albeit male and female versus male and male. So there's a lot of tension there, and as these sections progress, we see very much that they lose respect for each other. If Phasma even had respect for her brother at all, it's hard to say. So that tension continues to escalate. We move back to V, and there is a floating droid known as Iris that Cardinal has, and its readouts and sensors continue to tell Cardinal, look, you need to give her food, you need to give her water, she's not going to live. And because it happened, she gets protein packets, and they're horribly disgusting, but there's protein in there and nutrients. So it keeps her at least alive or coherent enough to be able to continue to tell the story. She continues to work on Cardinal and finds out that he's from Jakku. And where they go with that is hard to say, but I do like seeing the connectivity there. And we basically get quite a bit of their philosophy. There's pages 50 and 51. They have quite a debate about basically the merits of the First Order versus the Resistance and who's a good guy. And of course, someone who is bad typically doesn't think they're a bad guy. But here's kind of the back and forth that they have. Cardinal smile disappears. This is again on page 50. Morals, the Resistance, are you joking? They advocate anarchy and destruction. Selfishness, not morals. And then V responds, and the First Order is about morals and not just the need to hold dominion over the galaxy. And then he says something I think is fascinating. It's right there in the name, First Order, first, comma, order. Fixing the mess left behind by the Republic and now the New Republic. Getting rid of bloated diplomats and lobbyists who don't represent real people with real problems. Bringing equality to all. The old system of government is ludicrous and doomed to fail. Sentient beings are incapable of making the choices that are in their best interests in the long run. The whole point of the First Order is stability. Easy to get this unstable to join them up, then, isn't it? What about the individual? What about freedom? With so many people on so many worlds, don't our differences and our unique choices make us beautiful? Then Cardinal scoffs and says our differences make us vulnerable. Vulnerable to misrule, to corruption, to getting mired in bureaucracy instead of effecting real change. Stability ensures progress for everyone. That's the whole point of government. V response is basically saying this is someone who doesn't realize that they are a tool for a tyrant. So this is very similar to the kind of discussion that would go on and had gone on with the Empire and the Rebellion back during the time of the original trilogy. So it's fascinating to see that as much as this culture, the galaxy has progressed as far as time-wise, old habits die hard and old philosophies are still very much alive and present. And we see that in our modern world, of course, in a non-fictional world as well. So back to Parnassus, in a big moment happens. The ship comes out of the sky, crashes. It was brought down by the planet's defense systems. And it's a ship, a First Order ship that has Brendel Hux in it and a couple of stormtroopers, First Order stormtroopers, and then a First Order droid. Now, this causes quite a disturbance amongst the Sire, and then, of course, along with the Claws as well. So Phasma has to break the truce to find the ship. She wants to find it because she feels like there will be technology on there that can help their people to survive and possibly get an advantage in their lives. But her brother does not want her to do this because he believes that this is a ship that is in the territory of the Claws, and it's not their right to do it. But Phasma basically says, well, I'll talk to him, I'll give him a chance, and she skirts her way around acknowledging that it is in fact breaking the truce, and she full well knows that. But we see again and again, she loves to battle, she loves to fight, she loves exerting her dominance. She is every bit the alpha, the ultimate alpha, really. Hard not to see her in the light that I see her now when I look at the action figure or just different images of her in my Star Wars office, because you just know what she's capable of and basically what makes her tick. And she's scary. She's legitimately scary, and she's earning the reputation that was presented in The Force Awakens. I'm loving this book so much more than I expected, which is a great thing, of course. So now, Phasma does break the truce, and she completely ignores her brother and goes around him, even though they put on this facade of, look, I don't support this, but if you think it will help our people, go ahead. And she says, I promise I'll basically play by the rules, but the rules are whatever Phasma is feeling at the time, honestly, and whatever lets her evoke or utilize dominance in asserting herself. So on page 73, a lot of interesting things happen. They kill a number of Dougs, and they make quick work of them, and Brendel Hux is really intrigued and fascinated by these warriors, especially Phasma, of course, and she is also mutually intrigued by the efficiency of the stormtroopers and the way they follow orders and the precision with which they hold their weapons and carry themselves, their body language, etc. So you can see where this is going, of course. And it's interesting, too, because on page 73, Hux talks about something in the First Order, and he brings up the word political and the word military, and Phasma doesn't know what those words mean. And she asks very much point blank, what is political? What is military? What are these words? They're sort of playing off of one another and playing chess against one another, whether they out and out realize it or not. I think Phasma does for sure. And Hux may think that he's getting some sort of an advantage in observing her, but she's very much studying them. And in fact, Delilah Dawson tells us that after a very quick time, Phasma starts to take on the accent and the way of speaking that the First Order has and that Brendel Hux has. She's very much like a predator, and that she can adapt and camouflage herself and take on her surroundings, which I think is brilliant and fascinating as well. So Keldo forbids Phasma from going with the First Order on page 79. He doesn't want them to go. He doesn't think that it's a good idea. And at this point, I think it's fair to say that part of the reluctance he has, besides caring about his people, and the narrative does tell us that he does care about his people and want them to survive. It says, and I'll just read you this. And before I get to that, I suppose I should mention that she brings him a leg because, as mentioned on the last show, one of his legs was severed at the bottom, and so he's missing one. She brings him a leg, on the surface to say, hey, look, you can be complete, you can be whole. Let's attach this leg. But he's extremely insulted and mad, and he feels like she's spotlighting the fact that he is weaker than her because he only has the one good leg, and that is what she's doing. But she tries to put on this outward show of, no, I'm trying to help you. And then he finally says, all right, I'll use the leg, I'll help you, I'll walk with you. And she says, well, it's going to take you a long time to get used to this leg, so that's probably not a good idea either. So he flat out forbids her again. He says, we have lost several of our warriors, and I see wounds among our remaining people already beginning to fester. It's simply too risky for you and your fine warriors to leave us here unguarded when you've upset the balance of peace. And she says, but brother... And then he announces to everyone, people of the Sire, hear me. Brendel Hux, hear me. I forbid any of my people from pursuing this quest. Brendel Hux and his people are welcome to stay here and join the Sire, but the risk of leaving is simply too great. Our people have fought and died to protect this cave and this land. You may have destroyed our hard-won peace with our greatest enemy, Phasma, but I will not let you destroy the Sire. The recovery mission is out of the question. The Sire has spoken. So she nods in agreement. She knows it's forbidden to disagree. And she says, the narrative says, there's no dialogue, but the narrator tells us, Ty and her brother had chosen to take on the formal mantle of rulership, denying her the place she'd earned at his side as his sword arm. So that is obviously a problem. Ominously, the narrator says if only Keldo had understood his sister better. So she still leaves anyway, and she heads out into the night with her 4 closest warriors, Brendel Hux and his 3 troopers, leaving a crippled and defenseless tribe behind them. And that is where we leave our book study for today. I'm scared for her brother because I don't think it's going to go very well for him. And she's like a cobra in a nest. There's a lot of metaphor because she's so animalistic, and they continue to tell us what she's like, very primal, not feral, but very primal, but with this very dominant personality, and she's got the know-how to do it too. For the next show, we will look at chapters 12 to 18 of Phasma, and please continue to send in your thoughts, comments, and questions with MP3 or email so I can add them to the conversation.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is...
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, Penguin Random House Audio and the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. Please support them the way they support our podcast, and remember to listen to new and archive shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Player FM, our Coffee with Kenobi website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and would love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Rebels Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. A big thank you to Dr. Andrea Letamendi and Dennis Keithley for joining us today. Where can listeners get in touch with both of you if they want to ask either of you a question or just say hello? And please feel free to plug any exciting things you have going on.
You can
Andrea?
find me on Twitter. Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Arkham Asylum Doc. And my website is underthemaskonline.com. Instagram is Arkham Asylum Doc. And I have a wonderful podcast, Lattes with Leia, with Amy Ratcliffe, where we talk about all things we love about Star Wars. I have another podcast called The Arkham Sessions, where I talk about all things Batman and psychology. And I'm actually going to be on a series on Alpha, which is run by Geek and Sundry and Nerdist. And it's all about my first time playing an RPG with a whole bunch of people. So it's called Starter Kit, and you can find that on Alpha.
Okay, so I've seen the pictures that you and Amy have had, and it looks super, super cool. Is this something, what is Alpha? I've never even heard of that.
So the series Starter Kit is based off of, or it's all focused on a bunch of people playing tabletop RPG, and it's a series experience. So there will be, I think, about 6 episodes, and Alpha is basically the streaming service. So you just go, I think you just Google Alpha, Geek and Sundry, you'll find it. I believe it's like $4 a month. So it is a, there's a paywall, but you can get 30 days for free. And the reason I'm kind of excited about this is that I've never played an RPG. And so not only is this my first time doing that, but there's a bunch of cameras watching me fumble through this gaming experience and a whole bunch of friends that helped me through it. So it was so much fun, and it's pirate themed. So there you go. Oh,
cool. I can't wait. That's going to be really fun. And Dennis, what about you?
Well, as far as Star Wars goes, you can find my Star Wars podcast, Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, over on RetroZap. I also do comic book reviews for pretty much all of the Marvel Star Wars titles on a weekly basis, which is also on RetroZap. And then, of course, I'm a blogger here at Coffee with Kenobi. And probably wading into enemy territory here, but I recently started a podcast devoted to Star Trek Discovery with my wife. And so we've had about 8 episodes of that come out. Just look up Warp Trails and you'll find us all over the place. If you want to get in touch with me personally, you can reach me on Twitter at DJKVER2.
I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. I love that you and your wife have that to share together. I think that's really great.
Yeah, we're having a great time with that. It's fun to watch those episodes, then run upstairs and record our thoughts for 45 minutes. We're having a great time.
Excellent. We should have a podcast about what it's like to do a podcast with your partner, because my Batman podcast is with my fiance, and it's like there's a whole other show we could do just on like, what is it like to watch a show together, do a podcast together, and do all this design and creativity and be on the same page, and then you live together. So
it's true.
It's a lot going on.
I think that's a great idea. Twice I've had Deanna, my wife, on, and it's great because she is so not a Star Wars fan, but fortunately she's a Dan Zare fan, so that helps a lot. So there's interesting dynamics. So yeah, I think you got the impetus there is pretty interesting. So thank you both, of course, for being on the show, and I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi and for contributing to Star Wars Conversation. For our next CWK book study, be sure to read Phasma chapters 12 to 18. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.